It all begins backstage at AGT. The cameras followed the long hallway where performers prepared nervously for their turn. But among the dancers, singers, acrobats, and comedians stood one child, no older than 12, quietly holding a small Philippine flag. His eyes were focused, not scared, but determined. His name was Angelo, a soft-spoken kid from the province, raised by a single mother who believed deeply in the power of dreams. For Angelo, this performance was not about fame or going viral. It was about honoring the people of his homeland and showing the world who Filipinos truly are. As the producers approached, they expected him to talk about singing pop songs or belting out powerful notes like many Filipino singers before him. But Angelo simply smiled and said something that stopped them in their tracks. He said he wanted to sing Lupang Hinyan, the Philippine national anthem, in front of the AGT judges. The producers looked at him surprised. It was rare for contestants to sing national anthems on the show, especially on international television where millions of people would be watching. But Angelo explained calmly that he wanted to represent the Philippines with pride, and he believed this was the best way he could do it. His mother, standing gently behind him, said that her son had been singing the anthem since he was 3 years old. It wasn't just a song to him. It was a promise, a responsibility, and a reminder of where he came from. When it was finally his turn to perform, the stage lights dimmed and the iconic AGT theme swelled through the theater. Terry Crews, standing proudly near the curtains, placed a supportive hand on Angelo's shoulder. He told him that this moment could very well change his life forever. Angelo nodded, clutching the miniature Philippine flag in his small hand. Then he walked onto the stage. As he stepped into the spotlight, the theater fell completely silent. The audience looked at the young kid standing alone barefoot with simple clothes and the proud flag in his hand. When he introduced himself, his voice was soft but steady. He said he came from a humble barangay in the Philippines, and that he wanted to honor his country through his performance. Heidi Klum smiled warmly. Sofia Vergara leaned forward with curiosity. Howie Mandel gave a nod. And Simon Cowell, whose expression was usually unreadable during introductions, fixed his eyes on the boy with unusual attentiveness. Maybe he sensed something different, something special. When Simon asked what he would be performing today, Angelo took a gentle breath and replied that he would be singing Lupang Hinyan, the Philippine national anthem. The audience murmured, surprised but intrigued. Simon's eyebrows raised slightly. It wasn't an ordinary choice. But he didn't question it. He simply said, "All right, Angelo, the stage is yours." Then the music stopped. No backing track, no instruments, no special effects. Angelo stood alone in silence. And then, with a clarity and purity that seemed impossible for someone so young, he began to sing. Every note rang with emotion. His voice wasn't just strong. It was honest, crystal clear, and filled with reverence. Filipinos watching around the world later described feeling goosebumps the moment he opened his mouth. The judges, who usually smiled or nodded along during performances, found themselves frozen, watching in awe. The anthem rose and fell beautifully, and as he reached the climactic lines, he lifted the small flag slightly, never theatrically, but with heartfelt sincerity. And then something happened that AGT fans would talk about for months. As Angelo finished the final note of the anthem, the atmosphere in the theater transformed. The audience stood up instantly, erupting into a standing ovation. Many Filipinos in the audience were visibly crying. Even those who had never heard the anthem before felt the emotion of the performance. But the most surprising reaction came from Simon Cowell. Simon, the man known for his brutally honest critiques and stone-faced expressions, blinked rapidly and looked away for a moment as if pushing back tears. When the camera zoomed in on him, viewers could see the emotion in his eyes. Something about the performance had touched him deeply. Perhaps the purity of the boys' intention or the bravery of choosing a patriotic song on such a global stage. Simon placed a hand on his chest, something he rarely did, and shook his head as though he was overwhelmed. When the applause finally settled enough for the judges to speak, Heidi Klum went first. She said that she had heard thousands of singers on the AGT stage, but never had she felt so moved by a national anthem sung with such purpose. Sofia Vergara called it one of the most beautiful and respectful performances she had ever witnessed. Howie Mandel said that he didn't understand the words, but he understood the emotion perfectly. Then Simon leaned into his microphone. The entire room fell silent again. He told Angelo that what he had done was incredibly brave. He said that using his voice not for personal glory but to honor his country was something powerful and rare. He said the performance reminded him of the importance of identity, heritage, and pride. Then he added quietly that Angelo had delivered one of the most emotional performances he had ever seen from a child on AGT. But then Simon did something unexpected. Instead of giving his vote immediately, he stood up from his seat. The audience gasped. Simon almost never stood up unless something truly extraordinary happened. He placed his hand on the golden buzzer, pausing for a moment as if making sure this was the right decision. And then, with a firm push, he pressed it. The golden buzzer exploded into a shower of gold confetti as the anthem echoed once more in the background. Angelo stood frozen, covering his mouth in disbelief. His mother rushed onto the stage, tears streaming down her face as she held him close. The Filipino members of the audience jumped, waved flags, and shouted, "Mabuhay Filipinos." The judges stood, cheering, and even Simon smiled genuinely, softly, proudly. This moment quickly became one of the most shared AGT clips of the year. Filipinos across the world celebrated the performance as an unforgettable showcase of national pride. The video spread rapidly on social media, reaching millions in just a few hours. Teachers in Philippine schools played the clip in their classrooms. OFWs abroad said they cried as they watched it. Even international viewers who didn't understand the language commented that the performance had moved them deeply. In interviews after the show, Angelo explained that he wanted his performance to remind Filipinos everywhere that no matter how far from home they may be, the heart of the Philippines lives within them. He said that singing Lupang Hinong on a massive international stage was his way of uplifting his fellow Kababians and honoring his ancestors. When Simon Cowell was asked later why the performance touched him so much, he said that patriotism when expressed sincerely and without ego is one of the most beautiful things in the world. He said Angelo's voice came from a place of purity that transcended language. For Simon, the performance was not just about singing. It was about representing an entire nation with dignity and heart. As Angelo advanced to the live shows, he continued to showcase Filipino culture through his performances, mixing traditional music with modern arrangements, telling stories of his homeland and lifting spirits around the world. Every time he stepped on stage, Filipinos lined up online to cheer him on, sending their love from Manila to Dubai to Hong Kong to Los Angeles. He had become a symbol of hope, pride, and unity. The journey didn't stop at AGT. News outlets from the Philippines featured him, calling him the kid who brought Luang Hinong to the world stage. Non-Filipino reaction channels on YouTube filmed emotional responses to his performance. Even schools in the Philippines invited him to perform the anthem live at ceremonies, saying he represented the soul of the Filipino youth. But beyond all the fame, the interviews, and the applause, Angelo remained humble. He returned home to visit his barangay where neighbors gathered outside their houses to greet him. His teachers hugged him. Kids asked for pictures. Elderly folks told him they prayed for him during the competition. He thanked everyone, but he always repeated the same message. He didn't do it for applause. He did it for the Philippines. And that sincerity is what made his performance unforgettable. This story reminds us of something deeply important. Sometimes the most powerful moments aren't the loudest, the flashiest, or the most technically impressive. Sometimes the most powerful moment comes from a child standing alone on a stage, singing from the heart with unwavering love for his homeland. The world needs more voices like Angelos's. Voices that uplift, unify, and inspire. Voices that carry the identity of a nation with honor. Voices that remind us of who we are, where we come from, and what we stand for. And so, as this incredible story concludes, we're left with a moment that will live forever in AGT history. A young Filipino kid singing Lupang Hinong with such extraordinary purity that he moved Simon Cowell to an emotional reaction and filled millions of Filipinos with pride. Thank you for watching today's video. If stories like this touch your heart, make sure you subscribe. Share this with a fellow Filipino and let me know in the comments which inspiring story you want to hear next. Mahal Company. And as always, Mabuhay Angelipinos.